Welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, the journey of becoming a conscious man, hosted by Milvo. Hey all, Milvo here, and welcome to episode 29 of the Unearthed Man podcast. I tell you what, it is excellent to be back. So happy to have season 2 up and running. Really enjoyed all the feedback that I've received just based off the season launch. So thank you everybody for those who provided feedback and for those who jumped on and listened to where we're at. I'd also like to thank those who have jumped in on the website, theunearthedman.com. I hope you enjoy the content that's up there, and I've actually had some men reach out via the contact and say, hey, we just want to have a bit of a chat. And yeah, I've been able to sit down and organise some time, and we'll be having a chat with those men and just to see where they're at. So for me, you know, that's the driver, because now I'm actually getting the view of the right message is now hitting the right men at the right time, and they're feeling empowered to take action on their life and actually say, hey, it's time for me to take responsibility and reach back out and start to lean back into what's happening and lean into my life, and then find someone who can actually support me on the journey. So I'm super excited by that. The other thing that's been happening, again, lining up a lot of really good guests for the podcast coming forward, and I'm super excited about that. Again, some of the positive responses are coming back in from the men I'm reaching out to say, yeah, we'd love to come on. So I think this is just going to be a really great season, and hopefully you all stay along for the journey. As you know, you can find me on Instagram under The Unearthed Man, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Also, you can just search for The Unearthed Man, or just by my normal name is Stephen Milverton. You could find me there on Facebook and within LinkedIn. So what's happening in my life at the moment? I'm relatively busy. I've started up a new job. I'm now working for the Northern Territory Power and Water Corporation. So I'm excited about that because I'm going to be predominantly Melbourne based, but I get to spend 1 week a month actually up in Northern Territory, up in Darwin. So I get a chance to connect with a lot of our the beautiful people who live in the northern part of Australia. It's a completely different countryside that's up there than what's down here, so I get that chance to head up north and connect up in that part of the land, which, as I said, I'm super excited about. But that's sort of what's going on. You know where you can find me, and I must admit I'm super excited that I've got the guest that I've got lined up today for the first guest I've interviewed for the launch of the podcast. He's an absolute amazing man, and as I said, I was when he agreed to come on board, my excitement started to build, and I just knew, as I've said, that this is going to be just such a bumper season. So enough of my just rattling and rambling on. So I'm now going to get on with the rest of the episode, and let's get on with my first guest of 2021. I first met my guest today at a one-day workshop that he was co-facilitating, and I was drawn to him as we both had a profound experience during breathwork. Since then, I've followed his journey and have been inspired by his courage not to just stand in his truth, however, to openly express it across many channels. This at times resulted in a number of polarising and not so pleasant responses. This, however, never deterred him from being open. A people pleaser, he's certainly not. What he is, however, is a seeker of truth, a nature lover, energy healer, embodiment and health coach, and a breathwork facilitator. And by the way, he also dabbles in the crypto market. I'm grateful and excited to have him as my first guest on season 2 of the podcast. Welcome, Brad Cusworth. How are you, Brad?
I'm great, Milvo. Thank you so much for inviting me on this podcast. I feel really honoured to be here, brother.
Cool. Thanks a lot for that. Look, as I said before, I think it was the Remembrance workshop that was held here in Melbourne that you co-facilitated. And I remember you talking into your story about breath work and a profound experience you had when you first stepped in that area of breath work. And I remember having to come over to you and say, hey, cool, I had the same life-changing experience. And it's I think it's interesting that people who may not have been through the breathwork process, understanding really what it does and how it moves everything around. So let's take a step back. What was that for you? How did you go from, probably a person similar to me that was sort of a people pleaser, or I was definitely a people pleaser and trying to do everything else, to an angry person, to all of a sudden, I've moved into being very conscious, very aware, understanding where I am. What was that journey look like for you?
Yeah, mate. So it's been a real journey for me over many years. I'm about 42 now, and it's been, I'd say, the majority of my life, many decades of searching. And I know probably many men listening to this podcast can relate to that feeling of feeling like inside something's almost missing, or feeling like something's not quite right. So for my journey was literally decades of searching for answers. And I'll give a little bit of context of where it all started. For me, was literally right back to when I was 4 years of age, and we literally had what I call the perfect family. I had amazing, loving, caring parents. My dad was really outgoing. He was really, life of the party, laughing, joking, things like that. And mum was great. She was very nurturing. I had two elder sisters, and I had one younger brother. And everything was happy families. And then one day, my entire life changed. I woke up one day, and my little brother had tonsillitis at the time. His name is Peter, and he was 2. I was 4 years of age. Best mates. We shared a bedroom together. We were just always playing, laughing, having fun, that sort of thing. And then one day, he just had tonsillitis. Mum put him down for his afternoon sleep, and he slept a little bit longer than usual. And I remember mum was out at the clothesline, and then she just got this feeling like something wasn't quite right. And she yelled out to my dad, check on Peter. I feel like, something's not right. And he went in there, and Peter was blue in the face. He was face down. He was not breathing. And he picked Peter up. And I remember I was sort of witnessing this, sort of almost like an out of body experience, sort of witnessing what was unfolding. And Dad took him aside, and I remember he started giving him CPR at that time. And then, on that day, I lost my best friend, my baby brother. And, that at that period of time as a 4-year-old, not really knowing what was happening, that sort of, that feeling of being out of control, feeling like, I'd lost my best friend. And at that time, I feel like I really built this thick wall around my heart. It was like the pain was almost too much to feel. It was too much to take on board as a little boy. And, my dad did the best he could. He still had 3 kids to look after. He was a teacher, full-time teacher. My mum was a nurse. He sort of carried on as best as he could, but he didn't have the tools or the skills available to really fully feel the depths of this emotion that came up. Imagine losing a child at the age of 2. So, Dad was very brave, but I definitely noticed a shift in him at that time where, he went from this really fun-loving, playful sort of dad to, I could feel his heart was hurting so much. And I sort of modeled that. I felt like it wasn't okay to fully grieve that process, and I sort of saw a bit of a difference between the way my dad handled it was to be strong, to be brave, to wear a very, very strong mask, whereas my mum was openly crying and releasing the emotion. So as a little boy, I made up this belief that, all right, to be a man, you've got to be strong, you've got to hold it all together, you've got to keep it together for the family. As crazy as that sounds at the age of 4. Whereas my mum was and my sisters were freely crying and releasing emotion. So that was the start of my journey, bro. Is literally feeling like my heart was so closed down and feeling, anxious and feeling very introverted. I went from a quite an extroverted young boy to very introverted. And that led me on a journey of searching for answers. I was I knew that something wasn't right. I knew that my heart was closed down. Well, I didn't know consciously, but I felt like my heart was closed down. And then, mate, that led on to literally decades of searching. And I went down the personal development route. I've read literally hundreds of personal development books, Tony Robbins courses, did so many incredible things on a mind perspective, which were great on many levels. Helped me build businesses, it helped me achieve goals, it helped me do all these things. But the key difference for me was that I was working on my mind. I was working on knowing all of the things, knowing about belief systems and the subconscious mind and all these incredible principles, the law of attraction and the secret and all these things we learn
Yep.
about. But the difference was I hadn't embodied any of it because I hadn't actually allowed myself to feel the layers of this deep suppression. So yeah, so that's what led me on a journey. Literally, it's only been the last 4 years where I've got into the real embodiment work, where I've gone more from head to heart. And that
Yes.
journey has been incredibly life-changing on so many areas. And it's enabled me to really start feeling the layers of suppression that I'd built up over many decades of my life. So that's what led me into breathwork. So yeah, that's a bit of a background of how I got there. But yeah, I'm sure you could probably relate as well, brother, like just going through and learning about many concepts, but not actually really dropping into body and feeling it, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and I've probably spoken this a couple of times on the podcast, but the first true breath work that I did was like 70 odd minutes. And the a couple of things happened, but one, this demon of anger I would physically watch leave my body because I'd been an angry person, but that was just all the suppression just showing itself as anger in me. Like all this stuff I'd held on to for so many years was, what might happen to my parents or with my brothers or these sorts of things was just turned into a different style of emotion I didn't know how to handle. And every now and then, like the container would just explode and I'd just be angry. And so it left. And the amazing feeling I had was it felt like someone had taken this thing that was sitting between my shoulder blades that had me all crunched over and closing over my heart, like someone had removed something physically from my body. And I'm like, oh my God, like, hello.
I can breathe again.
I can breathe again. My shoulders can actually come back. And
wow.
It was just that complete amazing experience of, and what it was my heart just went, I'm open, and how I saw people all of a sudden was like, I don't judge you. I have compassion for you. I want to know about your story. I want to understand why you're angry or why you're like this or why that's happened or why you would do those sorts of things rather than going, that guy's a dick or like he's like that sort of thing. Like my viewpoint in all that is now completely changed. And it's such a beautiful space to live. I mean, would I love to have done that years and years? And you go, sure. But that's where we are. So yeah, I want to touch back on, but I love the word that you've used, the embodiment, because what I'm seeing personally a lot of these days, and we spoke into this in a course I did recently, which is about self-development is the development of self, but from a little less because that's the ego self. So we can spend all this time developing ourself, but the reality is we're developing an egoic part of ourself and we're not embodying what it actually truly means to take all that on. So what does embodiment actually look like for you? And so when you read hundreds of books, what are you doing differently now as from an embodiment point of view?
Yeah, I love that question. Yeah, embodiment for me means combining the head and the heart. And to be fully embodied, I feel like we need to almost go to the depths. Like we need to do the shadow work. We need to be willing to dive into the deepest shadow aspects of ourselves, which are often, lurking beneath the surface. They're often subconscious. We actually, often we have this layer of denial, especially as men. We have this thick layer of denial. There's like protecting ourselves and like, I'm all good, I'm okay. And, and this stems from a lifetime of suppressing and not acknowledging our emotions. So embodiment for me, I feel like one aspect of it is, working on the mind and learning all the concepts. And some people are like, very against, working on the mind and goal setting and learning about belief systems and all this. I'm not against it at all. I think all of those things are really powerful. But I feel like unless we have done the embodiment work, which is actually really diving into our suppressed emotion, our trauma, really allowing ourselves to fully feel all of the suppression in our physical body, then that is when we can combine the body, the power of the heart with the mind. Combining the two together is where our superpower is. So embodiment for me is not only talking the talk. For many decades, I could rattle off all the, the Joe Dispenza work and the subconscious programming and, the beliefs that formed from 0 to 7 years of age and all of these concepts, which are great, but we can talk about things till the cows come home. But if we haven't actually embodied it and we haven't actually processed all of this suppressed emotion, then they're simply just words. And this is what I believe a key challenge that a lot of people are facing is they watch a movie like The Secret, they learn about the law of attraction, they learn about all these belief systems and all these concepts, which is all great, and they can apply all these principles. But if energetically they're holding on to a lot of anger, a lot of rage, a lot of grief, a lot of sadness, a lot of trauma, emotions is where we create our reality from. This is the real law of attraction. We attract things into our reality based on our energetic vibration, and that is based on emotions. So if we've got layers and layers of suppressed trauma, anger, rage, all of these suppressed emotions, we will continue to attract experiences in our life that is pointing to these suppressed emotions. So we will continue to attract experiences that point to our anger, that point to our rage, that point to our sadness. And it's the way of our soul is actually trying to communicate to us, saying, here, Brad, you need to look at this area, and I'm going to keep giving you experiences in your external reality, pointing to these things you need to look at until you pay attention. So this is why often many people keep attracting the same things over and over again. These are the effects outside of ourselves, but we're not actually treating the cause. So for me, embodiment is all about going into the deeper causal emotion that is therefore creating all of these effects in our external reality. So yeah, it's like combining the heart with the mind, and yeah, there's no bypassing it. A big thing in the love and light spiritual community, I call it the new age cage. I believe there's many great aspects to it, but I feel like the problem with this is like, oh, let's just focus on the love and light. Let's just surrender. Let's just be. Well, that's all great, but if we're doing that from a place of bypassing the shadows, then we're going to keep manifesting and creating the same reality, right? There has to come a time where we have the courage to dive into our own shadows. And I believe this comes back to, on the bigger picture, having the courage to dive into the shadow aspects of humanity right now as well.
Yes.
With what is happening collectively on the globe. Like, we have to be willing to go through and to learn more about the deception, the corruption. These are the shadow aspects of humanity, but equally we need to be willing to dive into the shadow aspects of ourselves. And that is to really dive into these suppressed emotion and trauma. And that's what I believe true embodiment is, when we're willing to really fully feel these emotions and go to the cause of them, release them, feel them fully, and then therefore our external reality starts to change. So it all comes from within. It's like that saying, the world within creates the world without, right?
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Again, there's a couple of things I will come back into that conversation, because you've touched on some really important aspects. I was actually talking to Jackie, my wife, last night, and it's interesting. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
I love that quote. Yeah.
And so I'm not even sure how true it is, but let's run with it, right? I think everyone's accepted that that's the definition, so we'll run with it.
That's it.
The reality of that is, and it's exactly what you've just spoken about, right? That I can read all these things, but if I haven't embodied and if I haven't actually dealt with those deeper elements, in the shadow, and the shadow stuff is a lot of the Carl Jung, shadow aspects of our personality types and our archetypes. If we haven't actually dealt with that, then the reality is, if we're not willing to change that, then we're expecting to have read a book, and then all of a sudden it goes, but I've read all these books, but these bad things keep happening to me. I've read all these books, but my friends are still, these are still the same friends I've got and everything else. Or I still don't have enough time for myself, so I'm still pleasing everybody and everything else, because you haven't gone, why is that happening? And so everyone gets confused, and then they give up, because they go, this is all rubbish. It's not working. It's because they're not, to what you've talked about, embodying it. They're not actually going, oh, hang on, emotions come up there. No. This is all sitting in my mind. So I need to deal from my mind space, not why is that coming up, and having the willingness just to every now and then sit down and go, whew, oh, where's that coming from? Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
a really interesting feeling that's come up. Like, that's like, there's a lot of sadness there. Like, where's that actually come from? And rather than going, oh, yeah, as you said, I'm a man, I'm just going to drop that out of the way because heaven forbid I might look like I got a tear in my eye. Like, I'm actually going to go, yeah, what's happened that's holding on to that?
Mm-hmm.
So on that sort of point, what's not really talked about these days yet, and that's where this new spirit and light community it's great, but it's just a new Western way of getting more Instagram followers, in my personal opinion. They don't talk to the reality of energy being everywhere and everything, and the vibration that transmits through that energy. Like people, for me, there's no understand the concept that if I stand in a field and I see a tree, that there's a view that there's nothing between me and the tree.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is there's energy all the way between me and the tree. And there's an opportunity for me to energetically and vibrationally connect between myself and the tree
Mm-hmm.
if I actually just surrender and let go and put out that right piece. So, question to you then, energy and vibration, what does that actually look like for you? And to talk into, what does that actually mean and how does that work and how can people understand that concept a little bit better?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question again. So for me, everything in the universe is all based on the principles of energy and vibration. I watched an amazing doco the other day on YouTube, and it was have you ever seen like those sound vibration plates, and they have different frequencies, and they've got like this white powder or on top, and they change the frequency of these vibration plates. And what is created is incredible, like these incredible sacred geometry pieces of artwork, like where the different frequencies of sound create these different incredible images on the vibration plate. And every frequency creates a different pattern. So they change the frequency or the hertz, and another pattern is created. And they were talking about how literally everything in the universe was created through sound vibration. And that's just one frequency or one demonstration of how energy can shape our reality, right? Because sound, as we're talking now, we can't see the sound waves. They're completely invisible, but it's an energy, it's a frequency, and has the ability to shift matter. So that I look at that as a great way to explain the many different levels of how energy shifts and creates our reality. Another great example is the work of Dr. Emoto. I'm sure you would have seen about the water crystals, right? Yes. This is another great example where he basically did these studies and experiments where he would magnify like a water droplet, and he would zoom in and he'd actually freeze it, right? So say you take the water out of a really polluted river as an example. So you take this water droplet out, he'd freeze it into a water crystal, zoom in with like a microscope, and you would see the structure of the water would be very, like, it would look horrible. It would look all disconglomerated, whatever that word is. It would look all, it would, if you imagine in your mind, you imagine what a snowflake would look like. It's like this incredible crystalline structure, whereas this polluted river would be, completely out of shape. Then what he would do, which was amazing, so this water droplet, he would then send it the energy of love or compassion or all of these incredible emotions, and he would send that energy to this water droplet and then freeze it. And after sending it that energy, this water crystal would change to this incredible shape. Imagine that snowflake once again, bringing the elements of sacred geometry, where it was this incredible, intricate pattern. So this demonstrated the power of our thoughts, the power of our intention, the power of the energy that we're sending out to these water, how that impacts the structure of it. Now, if we take this back to look at our human bodies are made up of 70, 80% water. So now if we take it to a deeper level, just imagine energetically the energy we're putting out to the environment, especially with people, right? So imagine the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs we have about people, not spoken words, the energy that we're transmitting. How is this energetically affecting everyone around us? But more importantly, how are our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs affecting ourselves? If this can have an impact on these water crystals, then we're 70 to 80% water. So the thoughts, feelings that we have about ourselves, that impacts our physiology directly. So all these are just little examples of how there's so much more to our universe than what we're being led to believe, right? They don't teach this at school. We're taught to believe that the only things that are real are things that we can see with our eye, basically, the physical reality. But I believe that secrets to the universe lie in the unseen realms, the power of sound, the power of thought, the power of frequency and energy and love and vibration, where this is the energy that literally shapes and shifts our reality. So, there's probably a whole podcast we could talk about this topic where we can really dive into it. But when we really understand the power of our feelings and our thoughts and our beliefs and how that sends out a frequency to the environment and to the external environment that surrounds us, and how that attracts certain situations, certain opportunities, certain people into our field is incredible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just another example, for the people where they believe it's right or wrong. The opera singer with a glass, and the ability of that voice at the right frequency to actually make the glass break.
Yes.
Right. That's exactly what we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you that's the power of a level of frequency. If you can break a glass once you get to that certain pitch or that certain thing, that's just the vibration that's going out there.
Yeah.
So, turn that into something you could, from a love point of view, if you put that same level of vibration or energy from a love point of view, just think about, the healing and, how more connected we would be if we were actually doing it from that space.
Yeah, totally. Amazing. Yeah. One thing that came to mind then as well is like, I'm sure, just to loop back a little bit, I feel like this is a piece that will be really important, because I feel like the men that I work with, one of the challenges they face is that they're very developed in the mind, right? So like we talked about, we can read books, we can learn about concepts, we can do all the things from a mind perspective, but the challenge that I found for my entire life was feeling like something was stuck in my body energetically, like feeling like I had a closed down heart, or I wasn't open, or had these feelings of anxiety, or, feeling like, something wasn't quite right. So that's why I was constantly searching. But I'm sure a lot of men could relate to the fact that, how do we actually access this? I feel like this is a really key point, is like, we can know all the things, we can know all the concepts, and it's like we've got this layer of denial over the deeper shadows and the deeper suppressed emotions. So this is where I feel like this is a really important point, is that the only thing, and it's not to say that's the only one thing that works, but for me, the only modality that enabled me to drop from my head to my heart to actually feel these emotions was breath work. And when I did this course 4 years ago with Preston and Alexi, and we did this amazing, it was an experience called the Bridge Experience. They came down to Melbourne, Preston and Alexi from the States, and we did this it's probably a 45-minute breathwork journey. I'd never done breathwork in my life.
Yep.
First experience of it, and literally at that point, I was searching for answers again. I was like, I've done all the things. Why aren't things changing? Why aren't I feeling better? And anyway, I went into this breath work with an open mind, and it was probably 20 to 25 minutes into it, I started to like freak out a little bit, because I felt like my ego was like, what the fuck are you doing? Right. It was just like that feeling of like, where is this going? Because my whole body started shaking. And then all of a sudden, half my face went numb. And then the left side of my body went numb, and my hands, people who have done breath work before, what can happen with your hands? They can create like this imagine a T-Rex with their hands like bent over and twisted, and they were locked in that position. I'm like, what is happening? And I just felt that feeling of like being at the limit, the outer limit of this bubble. And it's like this feeling of like, I have to stop breathing. I'm going to die. Something's going to happen to me. But then my higher self kicked in, and my intuition kicked in, and the message was, just keep breathing. We've got you. You're safe. And I was like, and I just kept breathing into those feelings, and I felt this massive weight, this pressure on my heart. And it was like this stabbing pain in the center of my chest. And I just kept breathing into that area and breathing in. And then all of a sudden, I just felt my heart literally crack open. And this feeling of like overwhelming sadness and grief just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, fuck. And it was like almost like it was almost like a whirlpool, and I got sucked deep into the center of my heart. And then I was instantly taken back to when I was 4 years of age, when my brother died, and it took me back to that moment. And at that time, I it was almost like taking a leap off the edge, and I fully dived in to the center of that emotion. And I literally cried uncontrollably for like 30 to 40 minutes, literally lost the plot. My whole body was doing this somatic release. I didn't think about it. My body just knew what to do. So I was shaking, half my body was numb. I was releasing all this emotion. And as I started releasing about 10 or 15 minutes into it, my brother's spirit came into the room, and I felt him there for the first time in 38 years.
Wow.
And his message was, I've always been by your side, bro, but you've never felt me because I've been blocked off. My heart was blocked.
Wow.
So, and he's even here now. I can feel him.
Yeah.
So at that moment, it was just like, wow. And I just released so much pressure. And I walked out of that room like there was an integration after that. I was like, wow, my whole reality was now shifted. But I actually felt incredible. It was like I remembered who I really was in that moment. It's like allow myself to open my heart. And from there, it just led on to many, many more breathwork journeys. But the key message that I want to get across is the power of embodiment work, which is one of those modalities is breath work, because for a lot of us men, we find it really hard to get out of our heads and to actually be able to drop into the emotion. I found it impossible. I actually couldn't. I don't know I would have been able to access that through just learning about things. I actually had to have a process of breathing, simply breathing. And by breathing, we increase the frequency. You're talking about energy and frequency. So when we do breath work, we increase the frequency and the energy in our cells. They literally start vibrating because we're flooding our body with oxygen. And anything that is of a lower frequency or energy in our body, including all of the lower vibration energies such suppressed emotion like anger and rage and all these emotions, they literally can't stay in our body when we increase the energy or the frequency through breathing. So it's by simply breathing, where it's literally like a purging process where these emotions have to come up and out. And that is the magic of breath work. We don't need to think about it. We simply breathe. It's so powerful.
Thanks for sharing that story. And I completely felt where you're there. Actually, I was feeling quite emotional as you were talking to your brother coming in there with you. I could actually feel that. I know you said you felt him there, powerful. But I could actually, I got shakes sort of feeling it here as well. So thanks for sharing that. My experiences in breathwork is similar. Same thing as I spoke earlier. The first one that I did was on Unleash the Beast. So Alexia and Preston had come back to Brisbane in 2019 and did Bridge and Extreme. And so my wife went and did that. And then the weekend after, they did Unleash the Beast, which I went and did. And so we went through that process. And I was the same. First thing was I just wanted to die. Like I'd put my hands on my chest and I'm like, if I die now, I'm good. Like I'm out of here, right? And then I went through a lot of grief, and my uncle who'd passed away recently, and my grandpa actually visited me, and they, similar to what your brother, they go, "We've got you, we're here," and that was really interesting. And then the last piece was that the blowing open of my heart, and then I've done breath work a couple of other times since then, and recently here at the Amend Movement guys came down and run a workshop in Melbourne. And I went and did breath work there. Tears, emotion. But the powerful thing was not stopping it. Like that's the power of that embodiment work. It's like, okay, I'm just going to cry now. I don't care. Like there's no embarrassment here. There's none of these, what if someone sees me as a blubbering? I don't care. Like let it all out. And that's the other thing for me with men, to step into this work, go and do it, go and do the breath work, find someone like yourself, Brad, to hook in to do the breath work, and just surrender. And if you cry for days afterwards, then just cry for days, because you're meant to do that. Your body wants you to do that.
Yes.
We've stored all of this stuff at the cellular level, like at every individual cell, the millions and trillions of cells we've got, have a memory of all those traumas and events. And as you said, the over oxygenation actually gets into that cellular level and actually goes crack you open, crack you open, crack you open, and like, okay, I'm now going to get out and let all this stuff come out. And the interesting thing when you talk about, and I'd love for you to give the explanation of the somatic body, because I think that, again, it's a term that most people may not be used to, is that people afterwards, a day or so afterwards, can actually like feel like they've got a cold, feel like they've got a flu, actually feel like they've been for a long run, like cold sores come out, rashes come out.
Yeah.
And so there's this other reaction that the body then has a secondary release. But yeah, so somatic, let's talk about that, the definition of that and what that actually means. So people go, I've heard this term, but I don't know and understand what that looks like.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So just with just on that last point you made about the secondary result of like rashes, or it's like our body's almost going to a purging or a detox phase. So that can be like another phase after the breath work, because when we release all these emotions, a lot of toxins can be released into the body. And it's like a process of like integration where the body then has to release all of these toxins, and that can show externally, but it's like it's a healing process. It's like a short term, you see all these external effects, but your body's actually excreting all of those toxins from the cells and healing. And what an incredible thing to witness when our bodies are actually, emitting all of that out of the body. And because most suppressed emotion, I would go to say is like 99%, if not 100% of physical disease, physical manifestations are a result of suppressed trauma and emotion. And it's our body pointing to things that we're refusing to acknowledge. But yeah, on your question about somatic. So somatic, the best, I'll give a little example of what somatics are, and where I believe we've almost forgotten how to do this. I have no doubt our Indigenous elders would have done this work all the time. It's basically, shaking the body and releasing trauma. I'll give you a quick example of something I witnessed. It was about a month ago. So I was going for a walk, and then we've got like this lake, and there were two ducks literally going nuts at each other. They were just fighting, they were pecking each other, they were going ballistic. And I was just witnessing it and just observing it. And it would have gone for about a minute. So they're really aggro, they're fighting, so much anger, aggression. And all of a sudden they just stopped, and then they both swam their separate ways. But as they're swimming away, they're both madly flapping their wings. They're not trying to fly. They're just literally just in the water, hovering over the water, flapping their wings madly. And what they're doing in that moment is intuitively flapping their wings, shaking their bodies, and releasing any residual anger or rage or resentment, whatever the emotion is for that duck at that time, shaking their body and releasing it energetically. And as soon as they did that, it lasted 15 seconds, 20 seconds. They released all of that energy, and then they're just swimming around happy as anything, as if nothing had happened. Yeah. And I'll give another quick example of this with kids, right? So you could have two kids, maybe they're 3 or 4 years old, they're playing the playground and they're all happy. And then all of a sudden, say it's Johnny and Sammy, and Johnny throws some sand at Sammy, and Sammy's like just loses his shit. He's just screaming at Johnny like, going nuts and literally unleashing for about 30 seconds, 40 seconds, whatever it is, crying, screaming, tantrum, throwing his body around, shaking, and then completes that emotional cycle, completes the loop. And then Johnny and Sammy are back laughing, playing, running around the playground. Yeah, because they've completed that emotional loop. He's allowed his body to fully feel all of that rage, all of that anger, all of that emotion, completed the emotional loop, which most emotions can be completed within 1 to 7 minutes. The most intense ones might be 7 minutes as a max, but complete that emotional loop, it's then gone from our body. And then we're back to neutral. We're back to that state of neutral. But what happens as we get older, Johnny and Sammy, their parents come along, say, Sammy, stop crying, stop your tantrum, stop crying, stop this, just go back, play nicely. So Sammy takes a big gulp and and then starts pushing down all that rage and that anger. Stop, you must stop crying. And because the parent's embarrassed, they don't want to be seen as a bad mother, all the rest of it. So they're saying, stop that natural, it's almost involuntary movement that we have as an innate ability as humans to release that emotion, but we're told that it's wrong. We're told to stop that. So his body stays nice and still, and he's like gulping the emotion down. It's like for the rest of the day, he feels like crap because he's like suppressed all that emotion. But somatic work can be amazing, combining it with breath work, because there's one example that I did which was super powerful, which was a dynamic meditation. Have you done one of those before, Milvo?
No, I haven't. No. Talk to that.
So dynamic meditation involves a period of time where there's different tracks and there's different stages, where one track might be dancing freely, like literally not like traditional dancing you see at a club, but like more animalistic type dancing, where we actually let the music move our bodies the way they want to move, right? Really dropping in. And then there's another element where it's like this real fast upbeat track where you literally just shake. So you start shaking your body, shaking your arms, shaking your legs. You're shaking, and it's literally like for a period of, I've even done it for up to 15 minutes before. So you're shaking, moving your body, still sort of dancing around, but shaking the arms, shaking the legs. And that's an amazing somatic process, because what we're doing is we're shaking the cells, and it's almost like breath work raises the frequency of the cells. By doing the somatic shaking, it shakes the cells as well. And once again, any emotion that is trapped in the cellular tissue in our bodies is shaken out so that we can start to release and experience it. Very similar to what the ducks are doing when they're shaking their body and releasing that anger. So yeah, I feel like that's another powerful modality that we can use, somatic work, where we're actually moving the body, we're shaking, we're releasing that trauma. And once again, we don't need to think about it. So a lot of these practices that I love, we move out of the head and we just simply move into our bodies. And our bodies are so intelligent. They know what our bodies need. They know what we need to release. A lot of the breathwork journeys that I do, you have no conscious awareness of what you're doing. Your body just starts moving in these weird contorted positions, and you start like howling or screaming, or like I've had 3-hour breathwork journeys where I've tapped into like this real tribal warrior energy, where I'm like, starting pulling out these martial arts moves and beating my chest, and it's crazy what you tap into, right? But it's it's super powerful, and it's just another modality to release trauma. And the more of this we can do, the better, because most of us have a lifetime of suppression, and not only our own suppression for emotions, we've literally downloaded the suppressed emotions from our parents, from our role models, from our teachers, from our siblings, from ancestors. Ancestors is another huge thing, where it's literally their trauma and emotion is downloaded into our DNA. So that's more layers. And then you've got the collective energy right now, which is quite dense now with the COVID bullshit going on. But that's a whole nother podcast there. But there's so many layers to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Look, you're spot on. Your example of the ducks I absolutely love, because the other one that I've heard is, if you think they're out on the nature reserve out in the middle of Africa, right? And there's a lion and there's a deer, and the deer just escapes from the lion.
Yeah.
And there's two things that happens. First of all, the lion will then run off, and the deer sits there and just shakes the daylights out of itself, right? And it's bound to move on. And this is the difference between humans and that deer. The deer doesn't then go, oh, fuck, I'm never going to eat grass in this savanna again. I'm going to go and live in a river, right? Because it feels safer in the river. Like, packs up and just like
hide in a cave somewhere.
That's right. Like, it's the trauma is so bad, like, that it then defines the rest of its life. Whereas us humans, we have a traumatic event that happens to us.
Yeah.
And then we attach ourselves to, like, because Susie at the age of 13 didn't want to go on a date with me, or, she dumped me for my best mate. Like, and we hold on to that thing.
We take it to the grave.
Yeah, that's right. I'm never going to date anyone again, or I hate the little Susies of the world. It's like, just be a deer, like, shake it off.
That's it.
Go back and eat the grass. Like,
exactly.
And so, there's so much that, we just don't take on and learn, I think, in our Western world. Whereas all indigenous cultures around the world actually understand that, and I want to double back to the vibration and energy piece. The indigenous in this country treat animate and inanimate objects exactly the same.
Mm.
There is no difference between a rock and a butterfly.
Yeah.
They are both living, breathing, active, energetic vibration elements.
Mm-hmm.
One just happens to be vibrating at a different frequency than something else.
Yeah.
And so they see all that as being completely equal and equal to them. So they are no different to the animate and inanimate objects. And so I love that aspect of it as well, because we run a hierarchical system. And our hierarchical system about where we see ourselves compared to animals, compared to trees, compared to the earth, compared to, what's happening in the universe, compared to diseases and viruses and all this sort of stuff. And you're right, there's a whole podcast we can do on,
the rabbit holes.
the rabbit holes. And as a sidebar, there's a guy by the name of Don Tolman, and basically he's always purported that there's only two things: toxicity, or the last one is you don't malnutrition. You don't have enough of something. Yeah. That's all there is.
Yeah.
Every illness is going to have, but I think we'll add in a third one, and storage of trauma, storage of emotions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Those three things drive all our illnesses in the world. Just work out which one of those are. Are you putting too many toxins in your system? Are you not getting enough of the good stuff you should have? And what shit are you holding on to that you just need to release?
100%.
It's pretty simple, anyway, we're apparently not the medical doctors of the world, and we're not here to offer medical advice.
That's it. Exactly.
Look, I'm conscious of the time because I know that your time's very precious and you've got something to head off after this. So where can people find you? Where's the best thing to find you? And what would be a closing message that you would want to put out for men that are out there listening into the podcast?
Yeah, sure. So to find me is probably easiest on Facebook or Instagram. I'm currently banned on Facebook because I post some. Whoop, alarm's come off. Yeah, I'm currently banned on Facebook because I post some pretty controversial things, but that's whole nother topic. But Facebook, Brad Cusworth, so BradCusworth. You can follow me on there, or Instagram. Instagram tend not to ban me or block me as much at the moment, so you can find me on there as well. I do a lot of breathwork sessions. I do either on Zoom or in person as well. So I do that. I'm a Reiki energy healer as well. I can do that either distant or in person as well. Very much into cryptocurrency. So I'm a cryptocurrency coach, trader. So do that. And also work with people on self-sabotage patterns and, helping them to really dive deeper and unlock some of this emotion, this trauma that they've been carrying, so they can ideally live their vision for their life. I find it's a lot of people are really stuck at the moment. They want to create something, they're working their butts off, they're doing all the things, but something's missing. And I really believe that thing that is missing is not being willing or able or have the know-how to really dive into this suppressed emotion, which is ultimately where we create our reality from. So yeah, super passionate about that. We do retreats, we do workshops, we do all of that as well. Closing message. So I'm a massive believer that where we're at in the world right now, we're faced with a challenge where a lot of people are pointing the finger at all of these external things that are happening in the world. So a lot of people are very angry about what's happening with the governments and the corruption and, the deep state. And you can get very stuck in these rabbit holes, pointing the finger at all these external things. And I believe there's merit to all of that. I've done decades of work diving deep into the rabbit holes. But I feel like where we're at right now, collectively, we need to take our power back. And to do that, we need to stop pointing the finger. It's like, imagine in your mind, you're pointing the finger at someone else. We've actually got three fingers pointing back at ourselves. So it's time that we actually start to take our power back and we start doing the inner work. And what's the inner work? The inner work is what we've been talking about this entire podcast, is being willing to dive into the shadows, being willing to take that leap of faith into the unknown and start working through these layers of suppressed emotion and trauma and anger and rage, because ultimately our inner world creates our outer world. And if we're filled with this suppressed emotion of anger and rage, sadness, grief, fear is a massive one, then we're actually contributing to the external reality that we're witnessing right now. And we have to take full responsibility for how we have contributed to this reality that we're currently living as humanity? How have we disconnected from our hearts? How have we disconnected from Mother Nature? How have we disconnected from our spirit, from our soul, from our truth? How are we acquiescing? How are we following these crazy orders, and we're wearing our masks and we're hiding and we're not speaking our truth due to fear of like what other people will think of us? Are we showing up powerfully speaking our truth, or are we hiding in fear, worried about how people will perceive us, or worried about a Facebook post or comment that we might get, right? So I believe we all need to bring up that mirror, look in the mirror today and say, all right, what can I do? How have I allowed this reality to manifest? How have I not spoken my truth? How have I allowed myself to be dictated to? Then we go from a victim to being like really empowered, like I can actually do something to make a difference. And that would be my main message now, is like, it's time, guys. Like, we need more men stepping up into the work, being willing to dive into the emotions. That's what true courage is. Like, true strength and courage is the ability to be vulnerable, the ability to ask for support, the ability to dive into our emotions. So yeah, I believe now's the time more than ever before that men really need to step up and rise. And by working through all these layers of suppressed emotion and releasing it, we can then combine the power of our hearts with our minds and step into that warrior spirit. You know, we need more warriors on the earth right now who are speaking their truth, leading by example, and changing the world. That's what we need more than ever.
Beautiful, man. I absolutely agree with everything you said, and I love how you said that. That's spot on. Thank you very much for sharing your time, sharing your wisdom, and sharing your vulnerability and, you know, your story with us. As I said, times through that, I was actually feeling quite emotional myself just hearing your story, and it had to be tough for you to have gone through those sorts of things. But, you know, I think we as a society are much better for, you know, where you're at today, for what you're putting out there, because, you know, I feel all the positivity that's coming out there. I love connecting with you, and it's been, you know, I've loved seeing, you know, your journey and where you're going on, and all the truth that you put out there is definitely inspirational. So I can just say from my heart, love you, brother. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast, and I look forward to remaining connected and us chatting as we go forward.
Yeah, thanks so much, Milva. I really appreciate you inviting me onto the podcast. I love what you're doing, brother, and really making a difference with the Unearthed podcast, Unearthed Man. And I can feel the ripple effect of what this podcast is going to do moving forward. I know you've got some amazing people lined up in the future, and this is what it's about, like getting more men empowered and more men doing the work. You know, a lot of women are showing up right now. There's so many warrior women in their divine feminine, and we, as men, it's time for us. Like, it's time for us to step up and do the work. And yeah, I feel like the work you're doing is going to be a big part of that, bro. So much love, and I look forward to connecting soon, bro.
Cheers. Appreciate it, mate. Take care. Have a great day. See you, mate. Bye. Wow, what a fantastic discussion with Brad, and I like to thank him for being so open and honest. Some of the tough things that he had to go through from a very early age, but, you know, so great for him to have found the tools and now helping other men use those tools to move beyond some of their challenges that they've also had in life. Well, that's now a wrap for episode 29 of the Unearthed Man podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. As I said, you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Have a beautiful day. Much love and care, and chat soon. Milvo.